Good morning. I'm Dr. Jay Wortman, and I guess I have the honor of being the first speaker on this Adapt Go Life series. Today in Canada, it is November 11th, which is our Remembrance Day. That's why I'm able to do this, actually. I have the day off because today is the day that we remember our war dead and the people that served in the military and fought in all the great wars. It's also a sad day because one of our great Canadian icons passed away yesterday, Leonard Cohen. I'd like to give a shout out to all my friends and Facebook followers, and especially my friends in South Africa, Glenn and Yale, who have put this together as part of their work in the low-carb area. And the topic I'm going to speak on today is one of my favorite topics. I always like talking about my kids. If you've been to any of my lectures, you know that. And today I want to talk about something that we don't actually hear a lot about, and that is the use of low-carb diet in children. And I know there's a lot going on right now in South Africa because of the troubles people have caused for Tim Noakes. And if you're not up to date on that, Dr. Noakes sent a tweet to a breastfeeding mother saying that good foods to wean her baby on would include meats and vegetables and high-fat foods and so on. And that created a big problem for him because nutritionists complained that he was giving unconventional advice. And it's been, a comedy of errors, I think, this long show trial that they've had where the Health Professions Council in South Africa has been prosecuting him for having given that advice. So I want to share my own experience with low-carb kids. I have two children. My son is 16 and my daughter is 7. When I had my low-carb epiphany, my son was actually 2 at the time, and he'd already developed his own eating preferences, which included sweets, right? Kids very quickly develop a sweet tooth, and that was the case with him. And when I started cutting carbs, we started doing it as a family, and a lot of his favorite foods were on the chopping block. And he didn't like that very much. I remember there were some funny times when, for instance, one time my wife and I were talking about juice, and that was on the chopping block. And my wife and I had a little bit of a debate about it, and then I was off traveling, and I phoned home the next night, and she said, "Oh, there was a big dust-up when I told Alex he couldn't have his orange juice." She said, "I asked him why, and he said, 'Yes, it's because it's full of sugar and it makes Daddy mad.'" So we had a few bumps on the road, but eventually I think we did a pretty good job of getting sugar out of his diet and minimizing the carbs. And then a few years later, much to our surprise, Anne got pregnant again. And at this point, we were well into our low-carb, high-fat diet lifestyle. And I had, at that point, decided that it was a good idea to continue to do that during pregnancy. What I did was I looked into the literature and tried to find any evidence that a ketogenic diet would be harmful to a gestating baby, and I could find nothing. All I could find was studies where ketosis was part of another pathological process. People who are starving, people who have certain kinds of serious illnesses may be in ketosis. And it was evident to me that nobody could show that just simply being in ketosis without another pathology was going to be harmful. So we went ahead with the pregnancy and continued to eat a very low-carb diet during that pregnancy. And the product of that was our little daughter, Isabel, who was a going concern from day one. She was a very healthy little baby right at the get-go. She had APGARs of 9, and her growth and development was terrific. And breastfed for a while, and then we switched over to formula. And here's a problem. If you're using formula, it's hard to find anything really good out there in the world of formulas. The main problem with formulas is they tend to use the kinds of fats and oils that I try and avoid, the ones that come from seeds, beans, and nuts. But we got through that phase and we weaned off of formula onto real food, natural foods. And in our experience, it wasn't that hard. What we did was produced and actually did most of the heavy lifting and made a lot of pureed vegetables with lots of fats. So we would do things like cream spinach with lots of butter and olive oil and cheese. We would do cream cauliflower and would make tomato and meat sauces, and we'd put that through the blender with lots of olive oil. And so we put the emphasis on no carbs, no grains, no sugars, and lots of healthy fats, which are the oils like olive oil, butter, coconut oil, animal fats. And Isabel thrived on that and has become a very healthy, active little girl, does very well in school, has a charming personality, and an indomitable spirit. So my advice to people now is, and I do see a lot of families in my family practice where I work, the advice I give people about their kids is if they're not really in a low-carb lifestyle, there's still some very important things they can do. The three main foods I advise people to avoid in general, and specifically with their kids, are grains, sugar, and vegetable oils. So-called vegetable oils, I think that's a marketing term. These oils are industrially processed. They come from seeds, beans, and nuts, and I think we should all avoid those oils because of the high omega-6 content and their vulnerability to oxidization. So what I tell my patients is, don't give your kids grains. Humans don't need to eat grain. It's a recent addition to the human diet, and grains are full of things that are probably not very good for us, all the anti-nutrients in grains, phytates, lectins, saponins. And humans, if you take human history and look back, it's a very recent addition to the human diet, and I think probably the main propagator of our problems with chronic disease. And then when we added sugar in more recent times, that made things worse. And then even more recently, we added in the so-called vegetable oils. So if you pull any product off the shelf in the store, the three top ingredients generally are grains, sugar, and some kind of seed, bean, or nut oil. The top three ingredients in a muffin, which was supposed to be the healthy alternative to bacon and eggs, are grains, sugar, and vegetable oils. So we would all be better off if we eliminated those foods from our diet, but I certainly think it's important in kids. And I put a lot of emphasis on getting sugar out of their diet, and there's good reason for that. There's some old studies that were done back in the 60s that are gathering dust somewhere, not readily available on the internet, which showed quite clearly that with increasing doses of sugar, you reduce the effectiveness of your white blood cells. The white blood cells are a key part of the immune system, and kids that are eating sugar are chronically depressing their white blood cell activity. And this, I think, is the reason why I see troops of little kids coming into my practice with colds and fevers and ear infections and so on and so forth. And in our experience here with our kids with a zero or virtually zero diet, zero sugar diet, is they don't get sick. My kids don't get fevers and colds. They've never had earaches. Isabel, for instance, has had maybe 3 fevers in her entire life. She's 7 years old now, and in each case she sleeps it off in a night and carries on. So I'm convinced that no sugar and minimal carbs has been a huge contributor to that robust immune system that protects them from all these bugs. So what I'm going to end with here, I guess I would say in my own personal experience, there's no harm in cutting those foods from kids, and it certainly seems to have worked well in our family. We've got very healthy, robust kids, and I'm going to end here by showing you what Isabel's having for breakfast this very morning. Anne has made her some low-carb pancakes, which are basically egg, sour cream, and cinnamon, and eggs, cream cheese, and cinnamon. And they're served with some whipped cream that's sugar-free. And on top, we've drizzled a fat shot, an Adapt Your Life fat shot. And that's Isabel's breakfast this morning. How does it taste?
Good.
What?
Good.
That's wonderful. Okay, thank you all for joining us. And next week, you're going to be having another Adapt Your Life presentation. I'm supposed to announce who it was, and now I've completely... Is it Eric Westman next week? On Monday next week. So hope you enjoy that. Thanks for joining us. And maybe we'll talk to you again sometime not too long in the future.